Hey everyone, I'm Allison Morris. You're watching NBC News Now. Here's what's happening. Slammed with rain, but ultimately spared.
There's not been reports of really significant structural damage anywhere in Florida, fortunately, at this point.
Tropical storm Elsa weaker as it moves through Florida's Gulf Coast, where that storm is heading, and could it strengthen again? Plus 10 more bodies pulled from the rubble in Surfside, and a hearing on several lawsuits filed in connection with the condo collapse.
To truly win the 21st century and once again lead the world, to truly build an economy from the bottom up and the middle out, to truly deal everybody in this time, we need to invest in our people. We need to invest in our people.
President Biden in Illinois today making the case for his American Families Plan, why he says we can't afford to wait. We start today with Tropical Storm Elsa. NBC News correspondent Antonia Hilton's in Clearwater Beach, Florida. But first, NBC News meteorologist Michelle Grossman has the latest on the storm's path. Michelle, where is Elsa tracking now?
Hi there, Allison. Well, it's in northern Florida, so it made landfall earlier today, right around 11 o'clock in Taylor County, Florida. Now it's making its way through northern Florida pretty quickly and impacting Georgia at this point. So let's look at the latest here. 50-mile-per-hour winds. It did weaken once it crossed that land, moving north at 14 miles per hour, so moving pretty quickly. The location is 105 miles west of Jacksonville, Florida. Again, starting to really impact Georgia. So for the immediate future, that's what we're going to look at over tonight into the early part of Thursday as it tracks into Georgia. Let's look at what's happening right now. So we have some very heavy rain on the east side of the storm. This has been a very lopsided storm. Most of the rain has been falling on the eastern side, and that's still the case. So Jacksonville, you're seeing some tropical downpours, some lightning, some thunder, and most of that, again, is falling in parts of Georgia, but still northern Florida, you're dealing with some trailing rain bands as well. Winds are gusting anywhere from 25 to 30 miles per hour, and we're going to start to see this as we go up the coast, the east coast. We're going to start to see those winds picking up as well. So storm surge forecast is looking better for the coast of Florida. We still do have a storm surge expected 1 to 3 feet in Tampa Bay. We saw those southerly winds that's pushing that water onshore. But this is going to improve as we go throughout the nighttime as well. And then right near the Big Bend of Florida, we're seeing 2 to 4 foot storm surge. Now let's extend this track because it gets really interesting. So right now it's a tropical storm. We do expect it to weaken to a depression as it goes over the Carolinas. So the next stop is Georgia. Then it's the Carolinas as a depression. And then we expect it to re-strengthen once it moves over the Chesapeake. So timing-wise, near Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia, Thursday, 8 o'clock. But we'll start to see those winds picking up in the mid-Atlantic Thursday night as well. By Friday morning, we're looking at a tropical storm right off the coast of New York, moving over Long Island. So it's going to be a really interesting morning. It's a big commuting, time, Friday at 8 o'clock. And then it's going to move to the northeast as well. And we're going to see New England by later on Friday getting the impacts of this storm. So because of that, we have Elsa alerts all up and down the coast, still in northern Florida. That's going to begin to drop off later on tonight. Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, into the Delmarva, also New Jersey, the coast of New Jersey. And I expect these alerts to continue up through the Northeast and New England as well. So we're talking strong winds. We're talking heavy rain. We're talking the chance for severe storms. We're going to have to watch that over the next few days. But we're also talking about the chance of rainfall. Now, we had a lot of rain in Florida, but it's sandy soil, so they can take that rain. It's going to be a little bit more dicey as we look towards Georgia and the Carolinas. It's a very low-lying area, especially in South Carolina. The low country, we could see some localized flooding, some flash flooding. And keep in mind, when we're talking about tropical systems, most of the deaths occur with flash flooding. So this is going to be a real concern over the next, let's say, 24 to 48 hours. We could see anywhere from 2 to 4 inches, locally up to 5 inches. And the flood watch is going to affect 14 million people. So the peak wind gusts, that's going to be a problem, too, in terms of power outages. You're going to have very wet land. You're going to have really strong winds, and that could bring some trees down and some power outages. We could even see winds gusting up to 59 miles per hour in Brunswick, Georgia, and the same story as we move up the coast as well. So for the rest of today, more heavy rain in Florida, northern Florida, and also Georgia. And then it moves up the coast, still watching the chance for that storm surge as well. Then Thursday, it's going to be a miserable day in parts of Georgia, the Carolinas, into Virginia in the later part of Thursday. We're watching for the chance of that localized flooding and also severe storms. And then it moves into the mid-Atlantic, the Northeast, late Friday into early Friday morning. And by New England, by Friday evening to the early parts of Saturday, we are looking at New England. So, Allison, we've been watching this storm since last Thursday, and we're probably going to be still talking about it come Saturday. So this is a long one.
Yeah, it sure is, Michelle. It's incredible to see it go from the Gulf Coast all the way up to New England over the course of the week. Looks like a lot of folks are going to have to worry about the weather through the weekend. Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right, let's head to Clearwater Beach and NBC News correspondent Antonia Hilton. Antonia, I understand Elsa made landfall with about 65-mile-an-hour winds. What's the damage like? What have you seen there today?
Hi, Allison. Well, the damage here in the Clearwater, Tampa Bay area has really looked like trees that have fallen down, significant debris in some areas, and then even broken down power lines. And emergency response teams have been out handling this throughout the day. But the real concern starting this morning was actually the wind that you can still see here is present even right now. And that's because here in Tampa, the water in this area is somewhat unique in that it's very shallow. And so there was concern that these winds, that this storm would lead to a serious storm surge and flooding here. As with this shallow water, they can bring significant feet of water into people's home onto land quite aggressively. And so that has been something that people have been monitoring throughout the day because there are these low-lying areas here in the Tampa Bay area. And those folks were told by officials to please get to higher ground, stay with family members elsewhere, or to even come to shelters for last night and throughout the day today. So as things calm down, we'll start to see people returning home. Already people here have told me that they feel grateful that they were spared the worst of Elsa, especially as people here were watching it as it barreled through the Caribbean and even took 3 lives between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Nothing close to that has happened here. But the governor did say this morning, that loss of life is still possible even after a storm exits a place like this area because of debris, because people are trying to fix these power lines and mistakes can happen. People can still be hurt. So he's asked people to stay vigilant. Allison.
All right, stay vigilant. They will indeed. Antonia, thank you so much for your reporting. Let's bring in the mayor of Clearwater, Frank Hibbard. Mayor Hibbard, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us. I have to ask if we could look back maybe 12 hours and ahead 12 hours. What has this 24-hour period sort of been like for your city? What have people been dealing with, and what is the cleanup like right now?
Well, we were prepping, obviously, yesterday. We stood up our EOC, which is our Emergency Operations Center. And what we wanted to do is get people that were not in good housing into shelters. We only had 86 people avail themselves of that. And then we look for what is going on throughout the storm. Once we have winds of 45 miles per hour or greater, emergency personnel do not respond. Because they are going into harm's way as well. Fortunately, last night we did not have any calls for emergencies. And then this morning, what we did was started to look at the issues throughout the city. If there were power lines, trees, flooding in certain areas, the last thing we were concerned about was the storm surge at 10:07, which was our high tide this morning, which your previous reporters have talked about. That is always a threat.
I hate to say you dodged a bullet, but you're Floridians. You know how to deal with this. You seem like you were prepared, and it could have been a whole lot worse. Is that a fair assessment?
That is a very fair assessment. It is early in the hurricane season, so the hurricanes tend to be less destructive. We hope this is the last one we see this year.
We sure do, too, on your behalf. And I have to ask you about that. I mean, the first hurricane of the Atlantic City, it came pretty early. How do you prep for the rest of the season ahead, just in case it is a long one and you do see more hurricanes and more severe ones?
Well, the people around here are accustomed to storms. We really have to work with our tourists that are here to make certain that they're being cautious. Yeah. And that is one of the threats that still exists, is we still have riptides due to the storm. And a lot of The tourists have already been out to the beach. They like the waves, they're body surfing, but that can also be very dangerous. The one thing about a storm like this that really was not too severe is it can make people complacent. So you need to continue to communicate with people that we could have storms that are much more destructive later in the season. And they don't want to look back on Elsa and take it for granted that the next storm is not going to be severe.
Yeah, Mayor, great advice there. Just because this one was mild doesn't mean they all will be. And listen, I'm a New Yorker. We love to go down to Florida and visit, but I know we can be annoying tourists, not heeding the warnings, not staying out of the water. So a good reminder for us as well. Thank you so much for your time, and glad to hear that your city is doing all right today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Our first responders have truly searched that pile every single day since the collapse, as if they're searching for their own loved ones.
46 people now confirmed dead in Surfside, Florida. And as the search there goes on, a status hearing on several lawsuits filed in connection with the condo collapse. NBC News reporter Vaughn Hilliard has more from Surfside.
Allison, there's been no rain today, only sunlight here in Surfside, Florida, which has allowed these rescuers to continue and ramp up their rescue operation. Just in the last 24 hours, there is an additional 10 individuals who have been recovered. In the last 36 hours, that number is 18. Putting that total at 46, that means that about 94 individuals are still potentially unaccounted for. You know, this is day 14 of this search here, and we saw Mayor Cava of Miami-Dade County this afternoon show emotion that we had not seen out of her here in this press conference. I think it speaks so much to just the extent to which this community has gone through on so many levels. She has always been a very steady, assuring voice here, and she was very much that again today, but one in which it was clear here that this has been a long haul for these officials, but also these rescuers, many of them that are working daily, 12-hour shifts going through this rubble, looking desperately for individuals under extreme conditions here. When you're looking also at this rescue effort, they're still calling it a rescue effort, we got to take into note new comments from the fire chief, local fire chief here just earlier this afternoon, and he said that not a single one of those 46 individuals who was recovered appeared to have actually ever been surviving after that initial collapse, suggesting that all 46 of those individuals died at the moment that collapse took place, which puts into perspective what we're looking at most likely here as this rescue and recovery effort continues. One other note that I think is important that we address is the fact that there was a court hearing this morning in which 30 to 40 lawyers at a Miami courthouse appeared in front of a judge who representing multiple families here, not only those who were lost, but also those families that were in that tower that did not collapse, that have lost their homes. There is conversations that are ongoing about how to best move forward here with those lawsuits. I want to let you hear from one of those lawyers who's agreed to represent some of those families pro bono.
I think everybody's really pleased. This is kind of an unprecedented thing where everybody's really on the same page just to try and help what we can do to help all these victims and families. After the filing of actions in a situation like this, and by that I mean a mass disaster, there are obviously a lot of different cases that get filed and the potential for a lot of red tape. And so what this court did, which was terrific, was really get out in front of that and say we're going to get everything under one umbrella, everything in one courtroom, and have the attorneys working in concert to try and help these victims. So that was the first step of that was today.
One of the issues at hand is the money and damages, and where does that come from? The association board, which most of these lawsuits are directed toward, that board, those are individuals who lived in that condominium complex and are struggling themselves here through this these last 2 weeks here. One of the conversations was potentially selling this land that could bring in an excess of $100 million, that could be part of that fund that goes to cover these damages, obviously far from covering the lives lost here. But again, 94 individuals still unaccounted for, but progress, especially on these last 36 hours after Tropical Storm Elsa passed over here Surfside. Allison?
Let's go to NBC News Now correspondent Simone Boyce. She's following the latest headlines from NBCnews.com. Hey, Simone.
Hey, Allison. Today we start in Haiti, where President Jovenel Moise was assassinated early this morning. In a statement, the nation's prime minister confirming that the president and his wife were shot in a, quote, highly coordinated attack, killing the president and injuring the first lady. Now, she's currently receiving medical treatment. And over in New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo signing legislation that would allow the state's attorney general to sue gun manufacturers over harm caused by their products. The new law coming as New York City faces a rise in gun violence. And just south of Key West, the Coast Guard is searching for 9 people after a vessel carrying 22 people from Cuba capsized about 25 miles off the coast. So far, 13 of the passengers were rescued. And YouTube's recommendation algorithm still suggests videos with misinformation, violence, hate speech, and other content that violates its own policies. That's according to an investigation from the Mozilla Foundation, the nonprofit behind the Firefox web browser. Now, more than 37,000 YouTube users acted as watchdogs and reported harmful content. 71% of all the reports came from videos recommended by YouTube's algorithm. And in Minneapolis, the teen who filmed George Floyd's murder, Darnella Frazier, says her uncle was killed in a collision with a Minneapolis police vehicle just last night. Now, Minneapolis police saying that the officer involved was pursuing a driver in a vehicle that was linked to robberies as well as a carjacking. In a Facebook post, Frazier saying that the police, quote, took an innocent life trying to catch someone else. The most heartbreaking aspect of all of this, her uncle wasn't even involved in the pursuit. Allison, I'll send it back to you.
All right, Simone, thank you.
I'm going to have the finest officers. I will have their backs, but they're going to have the backs of the people of the city. New York is going to show America how to run cities, because I know how to run a city and I know how to lead.
Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams declaring victory in New York City's Democratic mayoral primary. Adams beat Catherine Garcia, the city's former sanitation chief, by about 8,500 votes in the second round of ranked choice voting. Garcia conceding that race today. Katie Honan, City Hall reporter for the Wall Street Journal, joining me now. Katie, Adams didn't win this race by a whole lot, but he is now the favorite to become New York City's next mayor because the city is so heavily Democratic. That would make him only the second black mayor of New York. So what gave him the edge here over Garcia?
So at the start of this, Eric Adams had some of the highest fundraising numbers. He had a lot of institutional support, labor support. He kind of came into this as one of the front runners, if not the front runner. So it was actually Catherine Garcia who jumped into the race without any money raised, without a huge profile or name recognition. She was the one who was that underdog. So I think how well she did is pretty compelling, considering she came into this race without anything or any of that. But yeah, Eric Adams has that wide support across the city. He did very well in large swaths of the city. So that is what pushed him to this victory.
Ranked choice voting, brand new in New York, and it's had its hiccups. Last week, 135,000 test ballots counted by mistake. How did the Elections Board guarantee that these results are accurate? And are they making any changes to improve this process the next time around?
So that 135,000 dummy ballot, that was what they say human error. They had run these test ballots to see how the program worked, and they forgot to clear the computers. So that was human error. And the Board of Elections, long before ranked choice voting was instituted here in New York City, has been plagued by problems. It's a partisan board. People have called for their full reform. With this, they said, look, we identified the problem. We said it was human error. We're not going to do it again. And this is what happened. They had a board meeting this week, and they said, we made the mistake. We apologize for it. But these are the results now.
All right. Practice makes perfect. Maybe it'll just get easier once they get used to it. Let's look ahead to November. An Adams competition. Republican nominee Curtis Sliwa. Tell our viewers more about him. He's a real well-known character here in New York. Does he have a shot?
I wouldn't rule anyone out. This is a very democratic. Okay. We have definitely voted Republicans in before. He, as you said, very well known. And he, like Eric Adams, runs on a platform about crime, which is sort of the biggest issue in New York City right now. He is calling for more police officers, calling for a different approach for public safety in New York City. But I wouldn't rule him out at all because he is so well known. I don't know if he would pick up votes from people who voted for Kathleen Garcia, or especially not Maya Wiley, who's more progressive. But that name recognition could help him. We will see between now and November. It's a long time.
Yeah, and as I said, he's a bit of a character, so it could make things interesting. It will certainly be an exciting election to watch. Katie, thank you.
Thank you so much.
New York City honoring its essential workers today with its first ticker tape parade in nearly 2 years, thanking them for getting the city through this pandemic. NBC News correspondent Rahema Ellis is in downtown Manhattan.
Hey, Allison, Broadway is slowly reopening to traffic after a Hometown Heroes parade today along this section of Broadway that's known as Canyon of Heroes. This is a space that's normally reserved for dignitaries and presidents, astronauts and athletes to celebrate their accomplishments. Today was about celebrating the accomplishments of everyday heroes, not just the healthcare workers, but some 260 different groups were also represented in this parade, including sanitation workers, as well as those who work in the delivery services, the pharmacies and grocery stores, who helped to keep this city running at its most difficult time. And everyone here, from those in the parade to those along the route, expressed their sincere gratitude about this parade happening. Take a listen.
It wasn't an option, but we went through something so devastating and we're still going through it. And the pandemic's not over, but I'm here to cheer on the community organizers, the advocates, everyone who just continues to do the work. It's very emotional.
EMT workers were also here on duty, but they were boycotting the parade because of a contract dispute that they're having with the city. Despite that, this parade went on without a hitch. Again, people on both sides, those who are in the parade and those who are watching it, all expressing their gratitude for what happened here and the fact that there were many people who put their lives on the line and at risk to protect the rest of us.
The hyper-transmissible Delta variant spreading across the U.S., making up half of the COVID cases in some parts of the country. Health officials now urging people to get vaccinated to try to slow it down. The question now, how effective are vaccines against this new strain? NBC News health and medical reporter Erica Edwards joining me now. Erica, people have been stressing about this Delta variant all week long. Even people who are fully vaccinated are worried about it. We keep hearing how highly contagious it is. So just tell us, what does the research say right now about how well our COVID vaccines work against this Delta variant? I think the one question we all want to know, can vaccinated people get it and spread it?
These are all really great and important questions, Allison. Good afternoon. Let's start with the purpose of vaccines. These are not meant to be, bulletproof vests. The virus can still get into your nose, can still get into your lungs and infect you. The purpose of the vaccine is to make sure that you don't get sick from that virus. Now, overall, we know that the vaccines work well in this arena. The question is still unknown. Can someone who is fully vaccinated but still infected transmit or spread that virus to other more vulnerable people? That's the unknown question so far. And we're talking about people who are unvaccinated, children under age 12 for whom there is no vaccine so far, or people who, are immunocompromised, people undergoing cancer treatments, or perhaps who have had an organ transplant. Allison.
So that brings us back to this big mask debate. I have to say, just from personal experience, Eric, I ran out to the farmer's market really early this morning, not wearing a mask anymore because I'm vaccinated, and the CDC guidance is that fully vaccinated people don't need them. But I walked in and more than half the people had them, and I thought, oh my God, am I doing something wrong? You spoke to some experts. What are they saying?
So, Allison, I'm assuming that you were outdoors at this farmer's market. A lot of those farmer's markets are outdoors, and that seems to be a much safer place to be overall, because as we know, it's really indoors when you're in a confined area. That's where the virus can spread a little bit more easily. It's a tricky question because in March, the CDC, as you know, said that anyone who is fully vaccinated can forego masks even indoors. And in fact, the CDC was praised at that time, especially among people who thought that the masking guidance before that was really confusing. Here we are 4 months later, and we still have that an unanswered question of what we were just talking about. How, can fully vaccinated people spread the virus to others, if that's even possible? In fact, many doctors I've talked with said that they never changed their behavior with masking at all. Even though they are fully vaccinated, they still wear masks indoors and movie theaters and grocery stores, et cetera, just in case they can spread the virus to others. Allison.
Erica, the doctors you spoke with are watching what's happening in the UK, where the Delta variant accounts for nearly all of the current COVID cases. I know the UK has a higher vaccination rate than we do here in the US, and they are about to reopen. What should we be watching for there? What lessons can we learn from the UK?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so right now, even though the UK does have a better vaccination rate than we do here in the US, really the main difference is the Delta variant. In the UK, the Delta variant accounts for more than 90% of cases that are circulating. Here in the US, the latest data we have is that the Delta variant accounts for about 51.7% of cases. That's expected to continue to increase over the coming weeks. Now, overall, the majority of people who are getting really sick tend to be the unvaccinated. People who are landing in the hospital still tend to be the unvaccinated. One other little tidbit, a lot of a year ago, people who were hospitalized were over age 65. Now that age is skewing younger, people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. You know why? People over age 65 have largely become vaccinated. It's really those younger adult groups that people are most worried about now.
Absolutely. Erica, thanks so much for being on with us and for the wise advice. I think we're all back in that phase of trying to figure out what we should be doing. Thank you. It's time now for The Bottom Line, our daily look at what's going on in the business world and beyond. Housing, the theme of the week. Nearly 30 million people in the U.S. moved to a new home last year, more than 4 million of them jumping from one state to another. And you might be surprised by where they ended up. Here's NBC News correspondent Harry Smith.
Mark Jenkins and Lori Crowell love their new home.
And when did you move in here?
5 days ago.
Oh, it's that new house smell.
It is.
Brand new, in fact.
Man, how happy are you with this?
Oh, ecstatic.
Love it. Absolutely love it. It's beautiful.
Lots in their subdivision on the outskirts of Boise sell within days of going on the market. Boise, in case you haven't heard, is booming.
We knew we wanted to move, we didn't know where.
Right.
And we had an idea, it was Boise.
It's got the quality of life that we had in Seattle, but on a smaller scale.
At least for the moment, that is. Idaho is the fastest growing state in the country. Real estate values in Boise are up 32% in the last year. 32%. Where there had been no new rental apartment construction in decades, developer Casey Lynch is putting up his fourth downtown building in just 5 years.
Can you literally not build these things fast enough?
At this moment in time, you can't build them fast enough. It's like a cultural phenomenon. Boise is just on the tip of everybody's tongue right now, where 10 years ago, people thought Boise was in Iowa.
Not anymore. Most every day, newcomers arrive from California, Seattle, and Portland. Longtime locals like Carrie Despot are not pleased.
Everyone that comes from somewhere else always says Boise. They act like there's a Z in Boise. There's no Z. It's Boise.
And what Carrie sees, she does not like.
What's changed for me is growing up here, I would look at these foothills every day, and I love these foothills. We no longer get to see our pretty foothills. We see houses.
Carrie echoes a common local lament.
We can't say you can't come to Idaho, but I wish that we could slow down take into account what we do have, keep it pristine, because otherwise it's just going to be another California.
As the population grows and prices increase, Boise faces other pressures, like the soaring cost of apartment rentals.
Demand for rental assistance for tenants has just skyrocketed.
Ali Rabi runs a nonprofit geared to aid and prevent homelessness.
Over the last year, we've seen a lot more people moving into hotels, their cars, couch surfing, living right on the line, about to go to shelter.
So there's a housing shortage for both those who want to move to Boise and those being priced out of the market.
How do you keep Boise?
That's the challenge of our time.
Before she was mayor, Lauren McLean led the fight for open space here. Her challenge is now affordable housing, water preservation, and catching up to the speed of her city's growth.
We recognize the magic of this community that we live in. We have welcomed each other for years. There are a lot of challenges that come with it, but it gives us a focus.
Morning.
Newcomers Mark and Lori, whose home has increased a whopping 60% in value since they purchased it a year ago, feel like they've won the lottery.
We have friends of ours who we've met since we've been here, chiropractors. He said, "Welcome to Boise. Don't tell anyone else." And it's sort of like the secret's out. Sorry.
Best kept secret.
I'm sorry about that.
Sorry about that. It's already out. Everybody knows about it.
With the housing market so hot, a lot of potential buyers are getting left out in the cold. So how can you compete for your next home in a seller's market? Here's NBC News senior business correspondent Steph Roll.
Joe Williams and Sarah Honick are facing a reality check when it comes to finding their dream home.
What has the search been like, Sarah? It's been pretty hectic. We'll hear about a house and we might get to go see it one time, and then within a couple of days, it has offers and it's gone. We don't want to settle on anything, but it's been hard because things come and go so fast and there's so little inventory.
The Minnesota couple have been saving for their first place together, but to be competitive in this housing market have had to slim down their wish list.
We've made several concessions on, could we live with 3 bedrooms instead of a 4th bedroom? How much square footage would we be looking to go down to? How much over list price are we now willing to pay? Because everything is typically $20,000 to $50,000 on average over list
going
price.
Over, yeah.
Right now, it's a seller's market with prices through the roof across the country. The median sales price now more than $350,000, a record high. And homes are selling fast, 17 days on average.
As a buyer, how do I shop smart and protect myself?
Know your must-haves and your nice-to-haves so you can hone in on the home that is right for you really quickly. Find out whether your sellers want a quick close or maybe they want a later close. And if you can be flexible, that's a good way to make your offer stand out.
And know how much you can afford. Experts recommend getting your finances in order early, including mortgage pre-approval, so you can act quickly. And consider carefully if you're asked to waive any contingencies, like a home inspection. Desiree Davis waived her inspection in Canton, Ohio, and now has buyer's remorse. She's saddled with thousands of dollars in home repairs, including a raccoon infestation in her chimney that she didn't know about.
We were in a time crunch and we did what we had to do, and we did what everyone's doing, waiving inspections, which is it's just not right.
HIV clinics facing a potential crisis that could derail the federal government's plan to end the epidemic by 2030. It's all because of an arcane federal law governing prescription drug discounts. So here's the basics of what's happening. Right now, HIV prevention clinics get the drug PrEP from Gilead Pharmaceuticals at a steep discount. The clinics use that savings to fund things like lab tests for uninsured patients. But next January, Gilead's cutting off those discounts, and the clinics stand to lose well over $100 million. Joining me now, Christopher Hamilton. He's the CEO of Texas Action Health. It's an HIV prevention clinic. Christopher, thank you so very much for being here. I just gave the basics there, but this is a complicated process. It involves insurance reimbursement. Bottom line, though, the savings here is going away. What will that do to an HIV prevention clinic like yours?
So our Kind Clinic program and Telekind program in Texas have been working very hard to make sure that we are taking care of uninsured patients as well as insured patients, making sure that we are taking care of somebody regardless of their ability to pay. This reduction in funding is going to severely impact our ability to do so. I worry about other clinics that rely on coverage from insured patients to be able to take care of uninsured patients. That's going to put a further squeeze on the ability for uninsured patients to see doctors and get the lab work that they need in order to maintain a treatment regimen.
You're quoted in a report on NBCnews.com saying you fear that more Black and Latinx people will acquire HIV if other funding sources aren't in place. Could you talk to me about how HIV disproportionately affects Black and brown communities, particularly there in Texas, and what kind of funding options and help you're looking for here?
So within Texas, Latinx and Hispanic populations have a rate of HIV incidence or new infections that's twice that of white counterparts. Black and African American Texans have an HIV infection rate that is 8 times higher than white counterparts. So those disparities already exist. We know that uninsurance rate in Texas is the highest in the nation. If you add on the effects of the pandemic, changing housing markets, and every other social component, you will see further declines in insurance coverage. We also know in Texas that the vast majority of people under age 64 who are uninsured, as you go down in age or you get younger, you have less insurance coverage. So, for example, all of the patients we have on pre-exposure prophylaxis, the once daily pill that can prevent HIV, 2/3 are under age 35. So we're already seeing the effects of that. Nearly 40% of those patients are Latinx. So again, that's going to put that further squeeze on clinics like Kind Clinic, Telekind, and others around our state on being able to take care of uninsured patients. So I think you were also asking about other funding mechanisms.
And in a moment, I want to get to Gilead's comment. But let me ask you, do you have other funding options? Where are you going to for help?
So right now, we are wrapping up our budget process, trying to look at what are some hard choices we may have to make over the next fiscal year. We have been putting money aside and saving, in case there is a rainy day. We now see when that rainy day is going to happen at the beginning of January of next year. So we're doing that. We're looking at additional grants. There is increase in the federal ending the HIV epidemic funding. So we're looking at grants as well as donations that will continue that work. There are smaller organizations that may not have the ability to manage a large federal grant and go through all of the administrative components that are required to work with that kind of funding. So not only is there a problem there, but if those small clinics close, that doesn't mean that patients are going to be able to be taken care of by other organizations.
We reached out to Gilead for a comment. They didn't respond before we went to air, but Coy Stout, who's a vice president of market access strategy there, told NBC News the company never meant to make this revenue stream. The intention was just to make filling prescriptions easier for uninsured patients. Whether they intended to make that revenue stream or not, it happened and now it's going away. Could generic drugs help here? Are there any other drug options that you could go with, or is that not something that's on the table?
The drug options are only one component. So while many manufacturers will provide medication at no cost to the patient, what's not covered is the cost of the doctor, the cost of the lab visit, the actual help needed by a patient navigator or a patient advocate, like we have in our program, to help sign up for these manufacturer assistance programs and to get other help and supports needed.
We all, Christopher, would love to see this epidemic end by 2030. Heck, we'd like to see it be over sooner. Thank you for pointing out this major roadblock, for talking to us about it. It's important that people are aware of what's going on. We're grateful for your time today.
Thank you so much.
QAnon picking up some new momentum. Its followers are running for school boards and local offices, spreading the gospel of Q, but not calling it QAnon, according to NBC News senior reporter Ben Collins. Ben joins me now. Ben, this next fascinating chapter of QAnon, tell us about this new plan. How are they spreading the Q, if you will, without calling it QAnon?
Yeah, so supporters of QAnon have realized that the branding is toxic, that it's just not going to work if you go into a school board meeting, you say, hey, I'm a QAnon follower and here's what we believe. And by the way, the kids should be taught like this. Instead, they sort of dispense of the QAnon name, keep the ideology, and sort of push those talking points. What we've seen is that they have sort of taken in Mike Flynn's call to get involved in the education of our children, is what he said, and to run for school board and run for local office. That quote is affixed to the top of a major QAnon forum, and that's what they're trying to do. You see this in California, in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Florida, people running for school board under the banner of QAnon. But again, they're not saying they're Q. They're just pushing those. They're just pushing those ideologies.
So these new positions, though, these new jobs that they're going after, give QAnon followers a pretty powerful voice in their community. So what are some of the biggest issues on their non-QAnon but Q agenda?
Right. So the big thing with them is masks. They really hate masks. They've hated masks all along. Okay. But their idea of why masks are bad is pretty ridiculous. They think that it's a boon for child sex trafficking, that somehow it helps children be trafficked. If you talk to actual human trafficking organizations that try to stop human trafficking, they will tell you this is not true. This is not how it works. It has nothing to do with masks. That's not how it goes. But that's their big focus, is anti-mask stuff. But they will also infiltrate. They will talk about all this other stuff. You know, they'll talk about Hollywood elites and pedophiles, and they'll talk about it at school board meetings, where really, you know, while you can have crazy conspiracy theories outside of that space, it's extremely foreign and has nothing to do with school board meetings at all.
Yeah. Yeah, to say the least, Ben, I feel like that's an understatement. So what are you hearing from schools and teachers unions about this? I can't imagine they want to be addressing QAnon when they have so many important issues to handle in their districts right now.
Yeah, the National Education Association put out a thing last month. They put out a post saying, just watch out for this. There are people running for school board who believe in QAnon. You know, it's not inherently disqualifying, but it can be spooky. You know, a lot of these people, if you believe in QAnon, you believe in a version of the world that is not real. You probably do not want kids learning that very unreal version of the world that's filled with child eaters and all this scary stuff that is meant to scare people, but is, you know, it's a horror story. It's not part of reality. So, you know, teachers are warning against this, and people all throughout the country, you know, since I put the story out today, people have reached out to me saying this is happening in my district. It's happening down the street. And, you know, thankfully, a lot of times these people are losing pretty handily. It's just, despite the mask that they're putting on to try to prevent themselves from being outed as QAnon supporters, the talking points are still pretty nutty. So they're not winning very frequently.
They hate COVID masks, but they're putting on a mask, if you will, themselves. Ben, thank you so much for your reporting. There's always a new twist and turn here, and you're always right on top of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
New allegations about poor care for migrant kids in the U.S. Children at one of the Biden administration's largest shelters for unaccompanied minors were being watched over by a contractor specializing in disaster cleanup with no Spanish language skills or experience in childcare. That's according to two federal workers who filed a whistleblower complaint to Congress. NBC News correspondent Julia Ainsley joining me now. So, Julia, these two federal employees worked at a shelter in Fort Bliss, Texas that was contracted out to ServPro. What are those whistleblowers saying? What was going on there?
Well, they're raising a lot of questions about how ServPro got that contract in the first place. They said that the contractors that they spoke with said that they did receive very little training and that they really had very little experience with child welfare, that they were told to stand at the edge of the tent. They said they stayed there very passively and that they weren't supposed to initiate contact with children unless they were approached. They said that that approach really backfired when it came to children who needed help, people who were in medical or mental distress, people having panic attacks, one child that had profuse bleeding but couldn't get off of their bottom bunk to go speak to an adult. And when these whistleblowers did get in touch with those children, did reach out to them, they made the initiation. The ServPro contractors questioned whether or not those people should even be taken to see a medical professional. They also say that They were not given a lot of clean things like clean sheets, clean underwear, clean clothes. They said in the girls' tent sometimes they were begging just for a clean pair of underwear so that they could take a shower. And this is in a very dusty, sandy climate. So it's really key that these children get these basic necessities that they say they were denied.
I mean, Julia, this just begs the question, how did a company that's responsible for disaster cleanup end up managing children at a facility? How is ServPro responding to these allegations?
That's the big question now. So ServPro Industries has 1,700 different franchises. I've been learning a lot about ServPro over the last few days, as you can imagine. They have 1,700 franchises, and ServPro Industries ServPro Industries said that this was one of their franchises that entered into this contract, and when they found out about it, they told them to immediately stop providing their services under the ServPro name, and as far as they know, they have stopped. Now the question is, what franchise was this exactly? And we still haven't gotten the answer to that, even looking through federal databases for contracts to figure out which franchise got this and how they might respond to those allegations. But so far, ServPro as a large company has completely distanced themselves from this, basically admitting they themselves also think it was inappropriate for these employees to be doing this kind of work.
All right, Julia, I got to go, but we have so many questions here. I know we'll be talking about this one again. Thank you so much for your reporting.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Science, technology, engineering, and math, affectionately known as STEM. A teacher in Baltimore using dirt bikes to teach kids those skills. NBC News Now anchor Morgan Radford rode down to Baltimore to see what you can learn about science when you hop on a bike.
Hey there, Allison. I visited a program that's putting kids on dirt bikes to see science in action. And they're doing it right there in the heart of Baltimore, where dirt biking has a really long history and now a really big impact.
I'm born, raised, and everything in Baltimore. Our sound of summer is dirt bikes.
For teacher and engineer Brittany Young, this is music to her ears. Because these kids are also here for an education.
Let me see a bike. Yeah, what you learn?
This is B360, short for Be the Revolution. Brittany founded it in 2017 to teach kids here in Baltimore about STEM science through dirt biking.
So I guess I have to ask the obvious question, what do dirt bikes and STEM have in common?
Yeah, that's a favorite question. I mean, when you think about it, it's everything. You know, the science, like the science behind popping the best wheelie, that's a physics equation. When you think about math with fixing dirt bikes and the best gas to oil ratio, and then engineering, mechanics fix a product every day. So do dirt bike riders.
Dirt bike culture runs deep within the African American community.
So as a kid, I was in the park watching riders. I tried, but I don't like to fall.
As a kid, Brittany also loved science and never forgot something a teacher once told her.
I remember being in second grade and my teacher told me I couldn't go into STEM because I'm black, I'm a woman, and my parents didn't go to college.
A teacher told you this?
Yeah, I didn't have my first black teacher until I was in third grade.
Determined to show kids like her that they can succeed in STEM, Brittany combined it with bikes, hosting classroom workshops.
This is your motor, the legs.
And community events.
And if you don't know how to reach your students by identifying with their culture, you can also lose them.
One challenge, dirt bikes, seen by some as a danger, are illegal on city streets. So this summer, Baltimore's B&O Railroad Museum loaned B360 a vacant lot where kids like 7-year-old Kamari Mullen can ride.
How old were you when you started?
4.
You're a veteran. You've been doing this for a while, huh? 3 whole years, almost half your life. That's incredible. And gentlemen, how are you feeling back there? What makes this program special?
I think it's a good idea to like keep young black men off the streets.
And it's not just kids. Brittany's instructors are also riders building their own sense of community.
How rare is this? I mean, have you ever seen a program like this?
No, never. This is my first time seeing
this. It's tough to get young fellas to get up, in the morning to go to school, but early in the morning they up, ready to come out here and have a good time on a bike.
What do you think people misunderstand about this biking culture?
I feel like they misunderstand the reason we ride, and it's more so for peace and freedom. Guns down, bikes up,
What do you mean by that? Guns down, bikes up?
Put down your guns. Everybody come collab, get together, and ride.
So, what are teachers and parents telling you about this program?
They love it. We can't get rid of their kids. Sounds
like you don't want to either.
Oh. No, I don't. I like that they stay forever and they become lifelong learners. But the way that I speak about our kids is not from, oh, we're helping them or we're saving them. It is we're empowering them to be their own advocates and to grow their own skills.
But to get the full B360 experience, there was really only one thing left to do.
Yes! Okay, give me some speed.
So one of my favorite things about this program is that Brittany also has a partnership with the state attorney's office where nonviolent offenders can actually have their cases dismissed if they come to work with B360. This is all part of her larger goal to really put everyone on the right path and build community.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.